Hi there! This is my Think Aloud about the digital book talks that I have shared with you. There are a couple things I want to share with you based upon my experience putting together those book talks. First of all, every book talk should start off with some sort of hook. One of the easiest hooks that you can create is simply a question. I always try to put out a couple of questions that I think are interesting and that hopefully will engage the listener and want them to learn more about the book. However, you can start in other ways. You don't have to ask questions. You'll notice in the Samurai Shortstop book talk that I have that I end up swinging this bat around and making a kind of joke. That's all for the purpose of grabbing the listener's attention. You can go about this in numerous kinds of ways, but that's the key thing. Do something to grab your listener's attention at the beginning of your book talk. Thereafter, say a little bit about the book, but don't go on and on about it. My Octavian Nothing book talk is way too long. I say far too much about that book. The later book talks, I think, are much better in that regard. Try to keep your book talk under 5 minutes. Ideally, really, I think a minute or two is perfect for a book talk. Especially on video, people start to get a little bit tired. Last thing I'll say is make sure you have a conclusion. In my book talks, I try to say why the book is important, why I think it's significant, why I think it's worth reading. And that's, I think, a pretty natural step to take after having laid out maybe a question about why they might want to read, and then explain just a little bit about the book. There are a number of obstacles, things to consider as you go about doing these digital book talks. Let me switch gears. I'm going to put in another video so you don't have to listen to this one too much more. And I'll talk a little bit about the difficulties and challenges of book talks. Okay, let me say just a few words about the difficulties and challenges of this medium. One you already know is time. If you go on and on for too long, people get bored and it's just not really worthwhile. First of all, you do need to think a little bit about how you're going to record your book talk. I began using a video camera and then switched to a digital camera and used the video function on it. And now I use my Macintosh laptop to record all of my videos. There's no perfect way to do this, and I encourage you to do whatever works best and most efficiently for you. For some of you, that's going to be a video camera. For others, it's going to be a camera. In some instances, some of you might be able to get access to a computer that you can use to record your video. Once you decide on that, don't get too hung up on making your book talk technically perfect. You're always going to misstate or do things that are a little bit silly or incorrect even. That's a part of what goes on in these book talks. Don't try to make it perfect. If you get too obsessed with being perfect, it won't work. That said, you may find that you need to revise and actually do a couple of run-throughs of your book talks. I'm not doing that with this Think Aloud. I'm taking a chance and I'm just laying it all out there. But you might find that you want to actually do this 4 or 5 times. The way I have always approached it, I never wrote out my book talks, even the longer ones, beforehand. I usually use the act of recording as a way to figure out what I wanted to say. Usually this would take me about maybe 20-30 minutes even, before I kind of worked my way toward a 1-minute, 2-minute book talk that I thought was hopefully entertaining and also informative. One last thing to be thinking about: lighting and background. I've got a nice dark background here, and that works really well given that I'm wearing a white shirt, have this pale face of mine. Think about that, because that will influence the way people perceive you. Lighting also can be an issue. If it's too bright, if there's too much natural light, the book talk really won't work. It'll be hard to follow. So think about that as well as you're putting together this book talk. Last piece of advice: always try to tap into whatever you think is most interesting, most compelling about whatever it is that you're talking about. Try to convey that passion to people. You can do that in a real understated way, or you can kind of be over the top. A lot of different approaches work, but whatever you do, think about what draws you into this book and what might draw other people to it as well. And if you can tap into that, you're going to have an excellent digital book talk. Good luck. Bye.